Who is Toad? What is Toad? Where is Toad? How is Toad? These are the questions that perhaps nobody ever dared to ask, but I will. Starting with who Toad is and where is he from, and then moving into the socialization and the culture of the toad species, and then we'll get into the biology and the anatomy of Toad. And for the record, I am talking about the toads from Mario. Thank you so much, Google AI. Now, toad is a bit of a loose term because it actually refers to the name of a species. The mushroom people that make up Mushroom Kingdom are a population of toads. So Toad is Toad, but Toad is also a toad. The same way that you would say this is Yoshi, but this is also a Yoshi. You might think that's a little weird because in real life we don't have any humans named Human, but that's not true. If we go back in time a lot bit, the biblical name for Adam, who's the first human on Earth according to a lot of major religions, is also the Hebrew word for human. In the Hebrew Bible, the word Adam is used as both a name for the first person and then also a name collectively for the human species. So it's actually not that weird that Toad is both singular and plural. And this is something that we just know Nintendo really likes to do. But the first time that we saw Toad was in 1985 in Super Mario Bros. But he didn't really have an individual name, and he was just referred to as one of the many mushroom retainers. Since then, the word has gotten changed to mushroom people, so, you know, perhaps mushroom retainers is a little bit insensitive now, a little outdated. Toad has since appeared to some capacity in over 60 Mario games. Mario Party, of course, Mario Galaxy, my beloved, Mario Tennis, he's a little uncanny valley in that one. Time and time again, we see this character, we see these mushroom people, so where do they come from? Toads are mostly native to Toad Town, which is the capital of Mushroom Kingdom. That's the kingdom that Princess Peach rules over, and it's where most of the Super Mario Bros. Games take place. We have seen Toad Town in a number of different games, and it's always looked pretty different, probably because it wasn't originally created by Nintendo, but it was from this Japanese anime. The title translates to The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach. That anime gave us Toad Town, but it also turned Toad into this, like, whimsical feminine handmaiden. It's cute, I guess, you know, possibly some undertones of misogyny, but you can also see that Luigi has some different colors going on than he does now. So it's definitely not canon, but it did give us the precedent for what the society and town of toads can look like. And it's pretty much just a bunch of mushrooms. I think that explains why Toad Town has gone to look so different in so many different games. It never had that original design to grow and build off of, so instead it's just been super inconsistent. The first time that we could explore a true Toad society was in Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, but it was pretty sparse. It wasn't called Toad Town yet, and it didn't really have a lot of life to it until we saw the same thing in Paper Mario. This is the first time that we see the name Toad Town, and this place is thriving. We have a dojo here, a restaurant, a bar, a ton of shops, a lot more homes. In terms of liveliness, like, this became the new standard for what Toad Town should at least feel like. We go on to see this in Super Mario Galaxy, other Paper Mario games, the Mario. But in all of its different forms, Toad Town does consistently tell us that toads are smart, and they kind of function similar to humans. They can operate shops, run businesses, and exchange currency, and they function under the monarchy and law of Princess Peach, since Toad Town is always the town that's going to be right next to Peach's castle, which technically means that Mario's circuit from Mario Kart Wii is Toad Town. I don't know if there's, like, some cultural erasure happening with the name there. That's a bit messed up. In Mario Circuit, or Toad Town Circuit as I'm gonna call it, you get to see all kinds of different species come as they visit Toad Town. And that's true for Toad Town in pretty much any game. It always acts as this plaza for tourism, which is really cool, and I think that that says something about the welcoming nature of toads. There's actually a lot that I could say about that, because, I mean, what is the behavior of a toad? Are they kind? Are they welcoming? We will answer all of those burning questions, but first we have to talk about something a little bit more important, which is today's sponsor, Coursera. Coursera is this platform that gives you access to online courses and degrees from hundreds of different universities. You can get professional certificates or full-on bachelor's and master's degrees for way less money than you'd be paying for on-campus tuition. Now, assuming that you are a loyal, devoted patron of juniperdev, this like really weird YouTuber, you probably have an interest in game development. Well, Coursera has a dedicated game development track that's made up of programming and game design courses. It is super specific about how long it's going to take, what the schedule's gonna be like, what skills you'll get, and you'll find yourself alongside tens of thousands of peers doing the same thing. There's also a program for data analytics that I want to point out. Data analytics is one of the most in-demand skills right now, and Coursera is offering data analytics certificates from Google, Meta, Microsoft, and a lot of other big names. Right now, you can get 60% off 3 months of Coursera Plus by visiting my link in the description. So go to my link in the description to find Coursera and set yourself up for success. Thank you so much, Coursera, for sponsoring, and let's get back to talking about Toad. So what is the behavior or the psychology that goes into the minds of these toads? We know that they, romp around in their little toad towns and wherever Mario might take them. In any Super Mario Bros. Games, toads are always these kind of scared little guys. When Bowser breaks into Peach's castle, or really any threat seems present, they run around and panic. In Super Mario Galaxy, Toad Town is victim to what can really only be described as a terrorist attack. Bowser decides to attack the civilian population of toads, which is, I think, a war crime, I believe. But thankfully, terrorism does put on display the anxious nature of these toads for us to study. They run in circles, they bump into each other, they're put in these moments of danger that they realistically can escape, but they just don't really have it in them to do it. That is exactly why toads are seen as these pretty peaceful creatures. They're very non-violent, because what are they gonna do? The Toad trophy that you can even get in Super Smash Bros. Brawl even describes Toad as giving off a strong sense of peace. They are consistently on the good side of the Mario story, and they're unwaveringly loyal to Princess Peach. There are a few exceptions to the rule of toads being scared. You have Captain Toad in Super Mario Galaxy, who's pretty adventurous, and then the Toad Brigade, the little Boy Scout army. It's also theorized that the color of the toad might indicate its personality. We see this a little bit in Paper Mario. The orange and yellow toads tend to be more brave and adventurous. The purple ones generally deliver mail, or they give Mario hints. The green ones are usually more happy and more talkative. I personally don't find a lot of validity in that theory, just because we don't really see those color-based roles anywhere outside of Paper Mario, and even then it's not super strong correlation. But still a possibility to consider. When I was researching for this video, I came across this form of someone asking what everyone's favorite toad color is. So if nothing else, I'm at least happy to report that pink is the #1 toad color of choice. That's really nice information there. Personally, I'd have to go with red, but to each their own. I would say genetics is probably responsible for the color of the toads. In Super Mario RPG, we see this toad family that's made up of a pink toad and a blue toad, so naturally their first child is also pink, and that makes sense. Genetically, you have dominant genes, recessive genes, that checks out. The sibling of the pink child is green. If you mix pink and blue, you don't ever get green. This could tell us that, infidelity is not a crime in Toad Town. Or it just, let's just say that genetics maybe isn't responsible for the color. But genetics, I think, does make the most sense, because in the early Mario games, we'd only really ever see red toads, then we saw blue, and then we started to see more colors. So I would say that there's a clear timeline of evolution happening there. There's probably a mutation at some point, and then as the timeline goes on, we get more and more colors. That makes sense to me. You start with the primary colors, and then the more breeding happens, the more colors you get. While we're on the topic of genetics and breeding, we're going to talk about the biology of these creatures, because I think that the anatomy of Toad and just the biology of how their body works is one of the most interesting things about them. Toads have very tiny feet, they have pretty round bodies, and then their mushroom head, which, by the way, is in fact part of their head. It's not a hat. This was confirmed by the producer of Super Mario Odyssey. In Mario Strikers Charged, we can actually see the skeleton of Toad when he's electrocuted, and from this you can see that the mushroom head doesn't actually have any bone in it, so it's not a skull. It's probably cartilage, if not actually mushroom. And when we study the skeleton a bit more, we can actually deduce a few things that aren't as obvious from looking at the outside. There's a really wide rib cage here, which could mean good lung capacity for swimming, but it also just means that he's more stout and sturdy, so he's probably better at balancing than he is agility. And that makes sense, because in Super Mario Bros. 2, when you pick a character, Toad has 5 whole stars somehow in terms of speed and strength, and then 2 stars for jump. Toad's skeleton also has very wide feet, so he's probably very stable. Nothing about the teeth here really scream predator. Other than that, Toad's skeleton is pretty similar to a human's. I actually reached out to an anthropology professor from my university to see if he would be willing to kind of analyze the structural integrity of a toad for me. And he replied, but he basically said, "What the hell are you talking about?" I think the fact that I was talking about Toad from Mario and not like an actual Toad got a little bit lost in translation. But what can I say? You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. One thing that I can tell you for sure though is something about the gender of Toad. This is a highly debated topic, but I can tell you right now that we do have a mostly solid answer. See, it's easy to assume that Toad is a male because, well, Toadette. We first saw Toadette in Mario Kart Double Dash in 2003, and ever since then she's gone on to be in all sorts of Mario games and take on all sorts of professions, kind of like Barbie. We have Dr. Toadette, Exploring Toadette, Furry Toadette. She's everywhere. And I do say she pretty lightly. It's really just an assumption here because of Toadette's pink color and pigtails. From a biological perspective, there's nothing confirming that she's a female. In fact, the literal director of Nintendo, our beloved king, said that they didn't really have a gender in mind when they made Toad, and everyone just kind of assumed that all Toads were male. Toad actually has a pretty feminine voice in Mario Kart 64.
Woo! Here we go! Yeah!
And we can't forget about all the anime Toads that I talked about earlier. These Toads are still Toad, they are not Toadette, so they really spin this idea of what we expect from a male character on its head. And when we got Super Mario Sunshine in 2002, we got this character named Toadsworth. Toadsworth is very visibly presenting as a male because of that mustache, but it would also be a stretch to say that all male Toads can grow facial hair because this is the only one that we've seen. I think that Toadsworth saw Mario's mustache or saw the mustaches of other men and wanted to present himself as more masculine, so he chose to wear the mustache. The same way that I think Toadette attaches her pigtails to appear more feminine. Unless they can successfully reproduce in homosexual relationships, then I don't think that Toads necessarily have a gender. The way that I think about it is what the director of Captain Toad told us in an interview in 2014, where he said that he thinks that Toads are, and I quote, a genderless race that take on gendered characteristics. That would explain why we see frankly, a spectrum of gender presentation among the Toads. Some choose to exaggerate it, and others don't. But this does introduce the important question of how these Toads reproduce. If my theory is correct here, and gender is truly a construct, then how are these Toads multiplying? There's actually a lot of discussions about this. It's quite the debate. So I'm gonna break down some different theories and then my own at the very end. The first theory is that Toads are delivered by stork, which is how Mario and Luigi were born according to the Yoshi's Island game. That would be cute and all, but we're not trying to get the PG-13 answer. We're trying to figure out whether Toad is getting it on. The second theory is that they reproduce asexually, kind of like mushrooms actually do. The same way that plants will release their seeds that then get spread around to make more plants, mushrooms will release their spores. In Mario Tennis 64, we actually see Toad get hit and then emit spores that then grow into other mushrooms, except that would mean every Toad in existence is an exact replica of the original Toad because asexual reproduction only has one parent, so you'd only be taking one parent's genetic copy. That's just really not the case and not realistic unless there were just dozens of mutations happening in the last 30 years since Toad came to be. So then there's our third theory, which is that Princess Peach is the mother of all Toads, kind of similar to how you have like a queen bee. Peach was originally known as Princess Toadstool, so that's kind of a point there. It would explain why Bowser really wants to kidnap Princess Peach, because if you take the queen bee away from her hive, he would get the whole beehive of Toads. I don't think that this one's the most likely, but I figured I would throw it out there for science. Okay, my fourth and final theory for Toad reproduction is, it's a bit of a hear me out, but we'll start at square one. The Super Mario Bros. Manual from 1985 tells us that the power-ups you get in-game are actually Toads that were turned into bricks. So that means that whenever Mario is smashing a brick and getting a power-up out of it and eating it, he is consuming a Toad. Now, anything that goes into Mario must also come out of Mario. So if Mario ingests this Toad-turned power-up and Toad's organic material is passing through his digestive system, in doing so, it would pick up some of Mario's genetic markers. Stomach acid is fully capable of breaking apart DNA in a way that could theoretically reassemble. So what I'm telling you is that whatever mushroom retainers back in the day got made into bricks, they got eaten by Mario, they passed through him, their DNA fused, they was shipped back out, and then they became a Toad. That would explain why there's so many different Toads, because unlike the asexual spore theory, we now have two parents, one being Mario and the other being Toad. I'm just saying that would explain why Princess Peach loves Mario if he's the father of all of her servants. It would explain why Bowser wants to kidnap Peach and stop Mario and kill Mario. Because if Bowser stops Mario, he's no longer gonna go and hit any bricks and he's gonna stop Toad reproduction. He's gonna collapse the entirety of Mushroom Kingdom until they go extinct. That's right, guys, this is not just a love triangle between Bowser and Mario and Princess Peach. This is biopolitical warfare. And guess whose side I'm on? Look, if I'm right about that, then Bowser has an agenda far beyond any romantic escapade that we see in any Mario game. This is an inhumane treatment of my people. Blood is spilled over this stuff. That's one more little interesting thing about the biology of toads. They don't have blood exactly, but they do have this liquid in them that's called Vim. Vim is the life force behind toads and they die without it, so it is kind of the equivalent of human blood. We know that from Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, where these aliens called Shroobs take over the kingdom. They tie toads to trees and then they extract their Vim and put them into factories where they make fuel for their spaceships. I don't know who came up with that plot line, but that's definitely a darker part of Toad history. You know, they probably got a memorial for that. Not to flex, but you know, the presence of Vim definitely works with my reproduction theory. It's basically a combination of human blood and mushroom material. And how else would it get the human blood if it wasn't from Mario, you know what I'm saying? Just saying, just saying. But who knows? You know, the only thing that I know for sure is that you should subscribe. Thank you so much for listening to my rant about toads. I really relate to them. I can't help but feel like I'm one of them sometimes. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!